Good evening and welcome to another episode of PEGASYS Presents. I'm Lauren Stefanelli, Access Coordinator here at PEGASYS. And today we have some guests who are talking about an upcoming event in Ithaca in mid-November that you can attend, that's open to the public. My guests are representing the Ithaca Area United Jewish Community. And to my immediate right is Dr. Marcia, a dentist and owner of Advanced Dental Technology of Ithaca. And to her right is Howard Erlich, who is also a member of the organization, a retired professor of communications at Ithaca College and former dean of the College of Humanities and Science at IC. So thank you so much for joining me. And both of you are on the board. You're the chair of this organization. But before we get down to the event, I think it would probably be a good idea for our viewers to understand the organization and who you guys are. So Howard, if you could start and explain your organization to us.
Sure, happy to. So the Ithaca Area United Jewish Community, IAUJC, has been around for about 50 years. And the short answer, or the short form, would be what we try to do is enrich Jewish life in Ithaca, New York. The longer answer to that is we try to establish 2 or 3 principles by which we try to enrich Jewish life. So, for example, one is that we collect funds from our local donors to distribute to needy people and organizations. A second is that Israel is central to our identity, and so Israel is very important to us. And the third is that we try to outreach to the local community, Jewish or not. And those are the 3 principles by which IAUJC tries to operate.
Well, so since you're bringing in a speaker from an organization from Israel, this kind of hits the ground on a couple of those principles, doesn't it?
And even more than a couple, because the talk will be open to everyone.
So that's the PR part of it too.
Right, exactly.
So Marcia, maybe you could tell us a little bit about the event that's going to be upcoming.
Okay, so the event is, I'll give you the title first, IsraAid, a unique program in which Israelis, Jews, Christians, and Muslims are saving the lives of Syrian refugees in Greece. IsraAid is an organization, an NGO from Israel that was formed in 2001. And at this point, they have served over 1 million people in disaster areas in 34 different countries. At the moment, they have programs in 18 different countries, and they're helping the Syrian refugees both in Greece and actually also in Croatia right now.
It almost seems like an anachronism to have an Israeli organization that's out running around helping Syrians. It kind of doesn't sound like what I would expect, but is that part of the reason why you're trying to get this information a little better known?
Definitely. Right now, there seems to be a lot of tension in the Middle East. Even for the Middle East, it's on a high level. And so there's a ray of hope when we know that there are Jews and Arabs, Muslims, Christians, and Jewish people working together to save other people's lives. And it doesn't matter what religion or what background they're from.
Okay. And so you've got a speaker that's coming in. Who is the speaker?
So the speaker is Yotam Politzer. He is a regional director, and he's actually based in Sendai in Japan. And he's been very active, and he continues to be active in the rescue operation in Japan, as well as he's making a tour right now of the Northeast.
Wait, why is he active in Japan?
Because of the Fukushima Daiichi disaster. With the nuclear disaster, there's still need for aid there.
Wow. Okay, that's pretty far flung.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, beyond the events that IsraAid contributes to outside of Israel, one of our interests, frankly, is to perhaps show another dimension of Israel in the local community. The local community.
Local community meaning
Ithaca, New York.
County?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Some people would say a progressive community, a community with a liberal slant. All of those things are positive, but finding finding news of Israel that is not tainted is not so easy. And so frankly, one of our purposes is to try to extend the understanding of Israel, because it's local organizations and perhaps even the media tend to focus on inflammatory and sometimes unfavorable events. And so part of our purpose is to be quite blunt, to show that Israel, like most countries, has a lot of dimensions to it.
So that's one of the reasons you chose this particular speaker?
Absolutely.
And how difficult is it to bring somebody all the way from Japan or wherever to Ithaca, New York? Was that logistically difficult?
I'll tell you how it came about. Honestly, about 2 weeks ago, I saw a picture online of an IsraAid rescue worker, a doctor, and a Syrian refugee had his arm around her, and he was thanking her because Israel had saved his life twice. Once when he was injured in the Civil War. Israel provides medical services at the border and in hospitals near the border with Syria to wounded people who come to that area, no questions asked. And now this doctor is in Greece providing aid. And his face was blurred out on the television screen or on the internet screen because there must be some sort of danger, either because he accepts help from an Israeli or maybe because he could be identified as possibly an insurgent and maybe he has family back in Syria. So the security risks and the barriers are huge, and breaking down these barriers between people on a one-to-one level is really a powerful message. So I did not know about IsraAid until 2 weeks ago when I saw this on the screen, and I found it very uplifting, especially now when there's so many knifing attacks going on in Israel on a daily basis. Bringing him here gave me a positive thing to do because I can't fix what's going on over there. Mm-hmm. So I emailed him. The internet is an amazing thing. And it turned out that he was coming in November, so it really, in the last week, I've put this whole thing together.
So he's going to be somewhere in the U.S. anyway.
He's going to be in the U.S., and he wanted to make the trip to Ithaca since he's going to be in Boston and New York City anyway.
Wow. One of the things, when I knew we were going to do this show, so I just Googled around a little bit to look and see what this organization was doing, and I came across this one article that I was kind of impressed or surprised or touched a little bit by, which was IsraAid was distributing food in Jordan to refugees, Syrian refugees that were in Jordan, and what they were doing was they had these big bags, purple bags of food, and there was somebody in the office that was cutting out the word Israel off of the bags before they distributed them because they just wanted to keep a low profile and not kind of brand these people who are accepting the bags with something that maybe could get them bullied or something when they went away with them. So basically the bags were being given out, which was like a week's worth of food for 6 people, and they were being done sort of anonymously where the people who received them wouldn't know where they came from or who was making that gesture and wouldn't know that, and they were doing it even though it was anonymous. And it's kind of unusual for countries or not-for-profit organizations to be willing to make that kind of gesture without getting the credit, you know, in the interest of what they're doing. I just found that kind of touching that they were doing that anyway. They would just forego the credit in the interest of the people that they were trying to help.
Yeah, it's a disheartening story in some ways. Not that surprising, but it is disheartening in the same sense that if you look at human rights in the Middle East, there's one country in which women are relatively equal to men, one in which gays, transgendered people can openly live without acrimony, et cetera, and that country is Israel. And so I find the story disheartening, but not that surprising, unfortunately.
So had you heard of this organization, IsraAid?
I had heard of it, but knew virtually nothing about it. And really, for us, the stars aligned in terms of our ability to bring this person to Ithaca, and he's been very flexible. He's going to, I guess, speak at Ithaca College.
Yes, he's interested in speaking to the students. A lot of students do community service activities. I know with Hurricane Katrina, students went down to help in New Orleans, and they welcome volunteers. So there'll be one program for students, and the Cornell students will also join the Ithaca College kids at Ithaca College for that program. That'll be around noontime.
On the same day that
On
he's
the same day,
speaking
yes.
with you, so that'll be November 15th.
That's correct.
Okay. Another thing that was interesting that I learned about this organization on listening to the podcast that you
Yes.
pointed me to when we spoke about this via email was that the organization seems to have a little bit of a focus. They can't be as big an organization as an organization from a bigger country that had more resources, so it seems like they have to be a little bit more targeted with the kind of help they can give. And one of the things that the podcast and that the article I read said they sort of specialize in is mental health services for people who are survivors of trauma in some kind of disaster area or war zone, who have post-traumatic stress or whatever, and that they have kind of specialist teams of mental health service providers, which don't have to be that big a group, which is why they're still in Japan after all this time. Part of it is that kind of help. But it's good to have a specialty. If you're small, then you specialize in something that you really know and you can really do well, and you can bring around to pretty much anybody that's suffered a trauma like that.
You're reminding me of something that I just read today about what they're doing in Japan. They're helping the survivors of that trauma by videotaping their stories. It can be very cathartic for people to share their story, whether it's on a video or writing a book about it, to kind of get over it. And Israel has experience from a lot of the Holocaust survivors are dying out, and we want to keep those stories alive, so we're videotaping them. I think Steven Spielberg is well known for that type of work, so that's one area where they can be of great help. And also, Israel is very advanced in agriculture in an arid climate, and a lot of their work in Africa deals with helping with that type of technology.
Yeah, the drip irrigation, I read about that too.
Yes.
So you don't need so much water, but
Right.
it's targeted through drip
And
irrigation.
And they even know how to use salt water to be able to grow certain crops too.
So it's funny, the organization seems to be doing really great things, and none of us heard of it until just very shortly ago. And so, I mean, I guess that in a way also that speaks well from the standpoint that they're willing to have a very low profile, and it's about helping people, not necessarily about bragging about what they've accomplished. And going into places where there are people that are in conflict, maybe everybody just wants to keep a low profile, and you concentrate on the victims and the survivors and the people that need help. And when I think about the U.S., you know, we give away a lot of stuff, but we make a lot of noise about it, and we make sure everybody knows we did it. And so...
No, it's a very good point. I was surprised to learn that they're still in Japan. It sort of reminds me of...
It's not over.
Right.
We're
of
the
Haiti
news has
thing
moved on.
5 years ago, and what I read is Sean Penn is still plugging away there without much publicity. And so it's touching to find out that they're still doing work without getting a lot of attention, that they're really devoted to helping people.
What are some of the other things that your organization, Ithaca Area United Jewish Community, does in the community?
Since I've been on the board, I'm certainly the longest serving person on the board, and the answer 30 years ago was easy. We collect money and we distribute money. But in the last 10, 15 years, we've seen a much more active role for the entire organization. Active meaning that we slowly, but now more intensely, offer programs. Last Sunday we had a program that was designed to showcase two donors, for example, Bob and Marcia Asher, who recently left a significant sum to the IAUJC. Bob was a faculty member at Cornell, Marcia a faculty member at Ithaca College, passed away, unfortunately very close, but they thought enough of the organization to leave us significant money to be spent locally for local Jewish needs. we have this program. We have brought in, typically we'll bring in speakers, people on our board charged with that. We do try to reach out to the local community. So for example, last year we did a Holocaust memorial program at Temple Beth El. We were pleasantly surprised. It was attended by over 300 people. The majority were not Jewish people. They were people who were interested in hearing a survivor speak. And she did a book signing, and there was some appropriate music through Ithaca College's School of Music. And so over time, we've become much more active, in addition to doing what we do try, and that is to solicit from generous people funds for needy organizations, mostly in Ithaca, some globally, but the Ithaca College and Cornell Hillels, for example, the local Chabad organization, and the two temples, Temple Bethel and Tikkun V'or. And in addition to those, we have what's called an innovation fund, and that was created about 5 years ago for people who have ideas that they want to get off the ground, and we try to help with modest amounts of money.
So a small granting organization.
Small granting organization, same people doing we're an all-volunteer force, and so our administrative costs are very minimal. Most of what comes in goes out, but we're able to seed, S-E-E-D, some things, a local klezmer
What's
group.
SEED?
To seed, not C-E-D-E.
Oh, okay.
Right, but to...
Just want to make sure I didn't miss an acronym.
But to stimulate some ideas, and then if it takes off, like we had a local klezmer ensemble, they asked for a modest amount of money. We were able to fund it so that they could showcase that kind of music.
Okay, well that was just not too long ago that there was a klezmer performance in town,
Correct.
right?
Yes.
That's right.
And
yes.
actually there's kind of interest in Ithaca with that. It's become hip all of a sudden.
It is. Yes, you're so right.
Let's get back to this organization a little bit. And the Yotam Politzer is the person who is coming to speak. And it says here that he's going to talk about stories and case studies of IsraAid's humanitarian work with Syrian refugees and other recent disasters such as the earthquake in Nepal and the Ebola outbreak in West Africa. I think we have a couple of photographs of some of the work that IsraAid does in some of these places. So we'll pop in a couple photographs so you can see some of the places where IsraAid is active. And the interesting thing about Mr. Politzer is that he is zooming around the planet so much. I mean, he was in Japan, and then in his podcast, he was going to Germany where they were doing something else, and then he's coming here, and then he's going somewhere else. And just to think that they are working, that it says that this organization is working in 17 countries, not one at a time, like now we're here and then we're going there, but 17 countries simultaneously on small but very, very targeted projects in all these places seems kind of amazing, and something that maybe it would be good for us to know a little bit more about. So it's a really great opportunity for people in Ithaca to find out something from the big wide world. In some ways, I think, Ithaca is 10 miles surrounded by reality. So it's nice if somebody we were constantly getting people from the world of reality coming in here and talking to us, so that in our little safe little cocoon-like bubble, we can find out what's going on out there.
It's really a very Jewish thing. What you say strikes me as, this is, I think, part of the culture, a culture that does try to see need and meet other people's needs in quite a selfless way. And so I didn't know that they were in that number of countries, but it certainly is impressive.
Also, I think it's true because the Jews have lived in diaspora for 2,000 years, and we've worried about each other wherever we're living, that we think in a global sense. And that has carried over now that we have a Jewish state in terms of how they look at the world as well.
Well, I think it will be interesting to hear Mr. Polister's stories about working with Syrians and working right next to a refugees zone. One of the things another thing from the article that I read about IsraAid's work in Jordan with Syrian refugees who have fled there was it was talking about how, what is IsraAid even doing in Jordan anyway? How did they get in there? And they talked about how very low profile they have to be. They follow all the rules. They have everything in triplicate ready. They call people in advance in ministries and in administration, so everybody knows they're coming and what they're bringing and what they're doing and who they're talking to. And they kind of try and work within the system, and they're really, really quiet about it and not broadcasting to the public, but they're working with administrative channels really, really well and make sure that they go places where nobody's going to come in and question what they're doing there or whatever. They've got permission in advance, and they're working with that. And then they have to very carefully figure out who they can help that will accept their help and what they can do. And then they've got to face their limits too. In the article it talked about some of the people that they were bringing these bags of food, which they'd taken the Israel label off of it. What they needed food, but what they also needed was medical care. And IsraAid didn't have that. They were bringing food, but that they had a project. There was a limit to what their project was, and the project was bringing this food and finding refuge. Getting it over to Jordan, bringing it to these refugees who are all living in these camps, and then running into people who are like, my grandmother has cancer, can you help her? Well, actually no, that's not the aid that they have. That must be kind of heartbreaking for an organization to try to help a population in need, and you just can't do everything for them. If they need housing, well, we don't have that. If they need medical, we don't have that. We have this food, that's what we have right now. And we're gonna try and do more, but we have limits.
Yeah. In Israel itself, the same is not true. I think Israel proudly says that at their hospitals, everyone is treated, every citizen is treated equally. In other words, Jewish citizen, Arab citizen.
There are relatives of the Palestinian President Abbas who've been treated in Israeli hospitals, and even Ismail Haniyeh, who's the head of Hamas in Gaza, who's sworn to the destruction of Israel, he sends his relatives to Israeli hospitals when they need medical care. It's kind of schizophrenic. And what I wanted to say about what's going on in Jordan, for example, is that I think Israel is hoping to build goodwill on a quiet way without being pushy about it. Yes, the labels are removed, but if they're doing any kind of counseling with anyone, they will eventually probably find out that these are Jewish volunteers that are there. And hopefully we build bridges that way.
Right, they're not making a big noise, but they're building bridges one relationship at a time.
And with the Jordanians too, working with the Jordanians, because Israel's at peace with Jordan and with Egypt, but we call it a cold peace because the leaders have technically made peace so they don't have to waste their money on war, they don't have to lose their citizens to war deaths, but there's still a lot of animosity and a lot of rejection of Israel in the basic population.
Unfortunately, when it comes to Jordan, King Abdullah, of course, he has a Western perspective. I learned, my PhD is from the University of Massachusetts. He went to Deerfield Academy, which is about 10 miles from Amherst, Massachusetts, and so that's a secondary school, a pretty distinguished secondary school. And so at least the King of Jordan has if you will, an international perspective.
Well, so we're right near the end of our show. So, Marcia, I'm going to give you a chance to address the viewers directly through your camera and tell them why it's important for them to come to this event. And remember the date and time and place.
Okay. So please come to Temple Bethel, which is at 402 North Toyoga Street in Ithaca, at 3 p.m. on November 15th. And we'll hear Yotam Politzer tell us about groups of Christians, Muslims, and Jews from Israel that are giving humanitarian aid both to Syrian refugees in Greece right now and several other important projects where IsraAid is functioning today. Thank you.
And Mr. Erlich, would you like to have a last word to encourage the public to come to this event yourself?
Certainly want to encourage the public also to become more aware of IAUJC. There is a website, Ithaca Area United Jewish Community. Please visit it. But let me also take the opportunity to thank you for your very careful preparation. So impressed with that. So thank you very much for hosting us.
Oh, well, happy to have you. And it's really nice when you guys are bringing the world to us in Little Ithaca. And how much does it cost to go to this event?
It's free and it's open to the public. Any funds that are voluntarily contributed will go to IsraAid, and I hope that after people hear about their good works, they'll be excited and want to help in whatever modest way they're interested. Thank you.
So the event is IsraAid is sending a speaker to Ithaca on November 15th, and we'll put the information up on the screen at the end of the show. My guests were Dr. Marcia Zaks and and Howard,
Professor?
And Professor Howard Erlich from the Ithaca Area United Jewish Community, which I was trying to make a pronounceable acronym out of it and failed utterly. Thank you so much for being my guests, and thank all of you for watching. Good night.
Thank you so much, Lauren.